it's a real thrill for me to be able to do this today. It sort of feels like a way to give back to People Fit, which has become a big part of my support system. So we're going to talk about support systems a bit. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm a clinical health psychologist, and people might wonder, well, what does that really mean? How is that different from any other psychologist? And it just means that a lot of my training back at the VA and the Cleveland Clinic is in working with people who have medical health conditions. So I did a postdoc in neurology there at. Oh, okay. Although I know people generally need air in here, so I will try to talk louder. Is that better? Okay. So I ended up working a lot with people who had neurologic problems, so a lot of MS and over the years muscular dystrophy and so on and so forth. And um, so that's what it means. But it's working with the individual who has the health condition, their family, could be their support system in other ways. I saw people individually in groups, in couples, and so on and so forth. And I love doing groups because the group dynamic is very different from seeing somebody on a one-to-one basis. So in Cleveland, where I was originally to go to graduate school, I met my husband there. And that was, of course, a big event in my life. And we were together about 40 years before he died 7 years ago. So you may have already looked in the handout, but one of the things I'm going to talk about is what are the things that occur in our lives that disrupt our thriving, that really challenge that and get in the way. And certainly his illness, he had pancreatic cancer for 18 months. And so that was very challenging. And right a year after we had moved east, we were in Cincinnati at the time at the university. He was at Children's and I was in adult neurology and over on the other side of the campus. And so we moved to Maine thinking, oh, this is going to be the beginning of our retirement. And in fact, so we were part-time back and forth Boston because he could not give up working. And he still had a big grant in Cincinnati. And so he was diagnosed a year after that move with pancreatic cancer. And luckily, we're spending a lot of time in Boston, so we ended up being able to get some really excellent care at Beth Israel, but we knew that he was not going to survive it. So that was a major disruption in my life. And a personal part of that's personal, but I grew up in Braintree, Massachusetts. I think we met and talked about that. But anyhow, so from 6th grade on, my family lived in Braintree. And so I moved around a lot as a kid, but Braintree always and the Boston area felt like home to me. So after my husband died, I thought I don't really want to do retirement in Maine without him. So I needed to come up with a new plan. And so I moved back to the Boston area. And I will tell you about other disruptions that ended up getting me to People Fit because crap happens, let me tell you. So this presentation is really another version of a program that I developed for Temple Emmanuel in Newton. So I had gotten involved with them through some work in an Alzheimer's support group. I was working on an Alzheimer's related project with Maine Primary Care up in Maine. I was doing that even after I left, sort of as an informal consultant. And so the person at the Temple who's in charge of all the older folks programming said, Peggy, I've got 3 Tuesday evenings next spring, and I want you to come up with a program. I was like, okay, what do you want me to talk about? She said, oh, you'll figure out something. And then she said, but now that you ask, one of the things I've noticed is that people come to programs and they get sort of charged up and they think they're going to do something and they never follow through. Could you talk about that? I thought, okay, well, I can figure that out probably. And so this is a smaller version of that program. And so I called it Aging and Thriving. While aging is a given, thriving is an option. And so we don't really have any choice over the aging. Okay. And I've got some credibility here. So I'm 76, so clearly aging. And when I picked up my prescriptions this weekend from the pharmacy, I thought, oh my God, is this really me? Is this really me with all of these prescription medications? So we're going to talk about aging, we're going to talk about thriving, and we're going to talk about making changes, because it's pretty hard, I think, to thrive unless you change something. It doesn't mean a big change, little counts, okay? So I'm going to give you some questions to think about as we start into each of these topics. I'm not going to ask you to answer these questions. This is just food for thought, as is everything I'm going to say today. This is not really a course. It's not a class. I'm not going to do an end of class exam or anything like that. I'm not giving continuing education credits. But as we go into talking about aging, I want you to think about these questions. So what words or phrases pop into your mind when I say aging? Again, you don't have to tell us anything. If you want to share at some point, that's fine. Also, let me ask, would it be helpful if maybe after each of the topics, we pause for questions instead of having to wait till the end? Okay, all right. All right, so what words come up when you think of aging? What changes have you experienced with aging? And maybe based on some recent experiences, I'm thinking things that you expected to happen and maybe some things you didn't expect to happen. And also, what are the changes that have been most challenging? Because I don't think they're all of equal weight. And why do you think that one in particular, or those two, have been the most challenging? So again, just things to think about. And you can think about them on the drive home or tomorrow. And this handout is for you to refer back to. I'm not going to speak directly from it, although I have a similar handout. So think about what happens as we age. And it's been hard for me to come up with good descriptive terms, but I thought back when I was developing the program, that some things increase with age, some things decrease with age. We gain some things, we lose some things. There are lots of different sort of descriptors. None of them, I don't think, do it justice. So what kind of things do we get more of? As I said, prescription medications, right? Medical appointments. If you want to go somewhere or set something up with a friend or somebody in your family, the number one reason they can't do it usually is, I got a doctor's appointment. It's very, very common. This comes up all the time. Aches and pains. And, I think most of us have always we get aches and pains. But they used to be from things we could point our finger to and say, that happened because I lifted something heavy, or I did too much, or whatever, right? Or I didn't get a good night's sleep and stuff like that. Now we get aches and pains and there's no clear reason. Okay, they just seem to come out. Like you wake up and you think, where's that from? Falls. And a fall is what got me to People Fit. I used to run, I never fell. And then 3 years ago, I fell down the cement front steps of the Belmont Library and ruptured my quadricep tendon. You can't walk without an intact quadricep tendon. You can't do much of anything. And had to have surgery the very next day. Okay, so another disturbance. And after I finished my physical therapy, my PT said, I think I have a place for you. Because I said, I really want to get back to a gym. And she said, okay, let me go get something. And she came back and she had this little coupon to come to People Fit. And that was almost 2 years ago. So falls, very common, which is why there's so much emphasis on balance here. And I love it every time Allie says, and we're going to squeeze in a little bit of balance on this exercise. I'm really thankful for that. We tend to gain weight. Our waistlines tend to get bigger, right? We don't look the same. conditions listed in our medical records. There are more of them. The last time I was in for an annual wellness check, I saw this note with all of these diagnoses, and I thought, that cannot possibly be me. And I looked at the top, and there was my name. And I thought, oh my God, they really do keep track of everything that ever comes up. And they never take anything off the list, you know? So it's really just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Day-to-day body maintenance. There's just more and more and more for us to do. I don't know how we ever had time to work, really. Feelings of vulnerability, and I've certainly experienced a fair amount of that. I think when I fell and I'm on my own, and I had not that, it was only been 4.5 years since I moved down to the Boston area. And I felt really vulnerable. This past September, for the first time, I had COVID. I felt really vulnerable. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be one of those people that never gets COVID. Sure enough, I got COVID. We do get more time. Sometimes we feel like we have more time. Also, feelings of loneliness, social isolation, we're really at risk for those. And I'm going to say some more about that in a minute. But we also get new people and new activities. Many of us start doing volunteer work if we weren't able to do that before. So new things are part of this, part of these increases. I have to say, and this I thought of this recently, growing up, and then when I was older and had a home and my parents came to visit us, I would say to my husband, why do they spend so much time in the bathroom? What are they doing in there? And now I have to say, I feel some guilt about being judgmental. And I always thought, why does my dad keep like 3 or 4 things in there to read? What is he? And I thought he was just trying to get away from us kids. So, that we were making too much noise or bothering. And there are things that go down or that we have less of as we age. So our muscle mass, our bone density, all this stuff that's now part of our maintenance, physical strength to an extent, our vision, our hearing, our sleep, our balance, our cognitive function, the mental functioning, our energy levels, sometimes our appetite goes down. So often people, as they get older, eat less or are less interested in eating. Certainly less interested in drinking, which is a big problem because I was reading, actually, that just popped in, my email is full of this stuff, health stuff, but that our sensors, as we get older, our ability to sense thirst goes down. It was really interesting. And I thought, see, it's not just that we're misbehaving. We really don't sense it. Financial security, safety, social support, all these things can go down as well. So, in doing these programs, because I also did the same program at the Council on Aging in Cambridge, and that one was in person. The first time we did it with the Temple, that was virtual. So it's interesting. We have different formats for the program. And then in Cambridge, we also did a 6-week follow-up, sort of to see what did people do with the information? Did they actually start working on a change? And I'll tell you when we get to change what one person said, which just blew me away because it has to do with physical therapy. Okay. So we generated these words. So people said things like forgetful, loneliness, vulnerable, confidence, loss, wisdom, anxiety, fear, illness, sick, panic. So there's a tone to these words. They're not uplifting, right? For the most part. So I think there's a lot about getting older that is hard to deal with and just doesn't feel so good. So I want to talk just briefly about the components of healthy aging. And I want you to think of each of these components as opportunity for change and thriving. Okay. And, I think to myself, why did I come up with this program, whatever? And I think my husband would want me to thrive. He would want me to be happy. He would want me to be doing things because that's the kind of guy he was. He was also a psychologist. He was a pediatric psychologist. So everybody he worked with was younger and sick. They had physical health problems. So physical health is one of the major components of health. And there are lots of things that are recommended, and Jim's not in here, but I was going to say a much loved, well-known man, Jim Agostino, that I overheard say, we need to keep moving. Okay. And that's true in all areas of our health, not just physically. And I got Jim's permission to quote him. Um, I should have said he's got the best laugh in the world. Okay. And so we're encouraged to eat healthy, to sleep well, to stay connected to people, because I was thinking about this on the drive over. I live in Cambridge, and that health, our bodies, and our well being, it's like a big pot of minestrone. I like making minestrone. And I thought, once you put all the ingredients in there, they affect each other, right? The basil affects the tomato and the everything. And that's how health is. So I just want you to think that whatever you do for one component of your health is probably going to have a positive impact for another component of your health. These are not truly separate entities. They really overlap. So obviously people know about avoiding smoking, and now there's all the not just reducing alcohol, but avoiding alcohol. So there's a lot of stuff that goes down. I think I don't ever tell anybody to avoid stress. Why do you think that is? It's not possible. Absolutely. I remember saying to students and stuff like, that's just downright cruel to tell somebody now you have to start avoiding stress. That's ridiculous. You're going to have stress. So we want to teach people how to cope better with it and how to reduce it and be more effective. Okay, so physical health. We all know a lot about physical health recommendations. So brain and cognitive health. Lots and lots of information coming out about this and how it's related to just about everything, right? I would strongly encourage you to watch Lisa Genova's TED Talks. I've got them here in the handout, and they're on the resource list. And the easiest thing is just to Google them. And has anybody ever heard of Lisa Genova? Okay, you will probably recognize her when I tell you. Lisa Genova is a neuroscientist, PhD from Harvard. She's a Massachusetts person, and she wrote Still Alice. Still Alice, that became a movie. Still Alice was her first book, and I think Julianne Moore played the part. And this was a woman who was a psychology professor. I didn't realize that until recently, even though I had seen the movie. And she was in her 50s, and she developed early onset dementia, Alzheimer's. And she does super talks, and she uses great graphics. And I think, and she explained things really, really well. So I would definitely watch those, because you really want to educate yourself about what is normal when you age, because there are things that change. Coming up, remembering people's names, walking into a room and forgetting why you're there, forgetting where you parked your car. But these are all normal aspects of aging, because I know nowadays there's so much talk about dementia of varying kinds that we all think, oh my God, and then if we have a parent who had dementia, okay, then we worry more. But take a look at her TED Talks, because I want you to know more about what's normal so you can sort that out. Okay. She also does a great one about what can you do to reduce your chances of developing dementia, because we now know that lifestyle and sleep and all this stuff has probably a significant part. And also keep in mind, because I know people worry about their genetics, and sometimes I think, oh my God, when I look back at my genetics, they're kind of messy, right? My biological father died when he was like 61. I'm like, I think, oh, 76. Okay, how many years have I gotten past that? My mother had dementia in her last few years, died when she was 92. So, we all worry about that. But in fact, our longevity and how we turn out is not primarily from our genetics. Okay. Genetics probably account generously for 30%. Okay. that makes me feel good because I think, oh, I have all this room to work with. Okay. So keep that in mind. Um, One of the things too I want to say about cognitive health is that, and this, Lisa Genova stresses this, you cannot create a memory, and everybody worries about their memory, right? You cannot form a memory if you didn't pay attention in the first place. Okay. So often people used to come to us because I was in neurology and they would say, oh, my memory's shot. And they maybe had an illness where memory might be affected, cognitive function might be affected. But when we tested them, what we saw was their attention. They were not paying attention. They were easily distracted. They were not processing information as quickly. So they were totally missing the experience that could have become a memory because they weren't really focused. Okay. To me, that's really important information. I also am involved in teaching a brain health program over at the Beach Street Center in Belmont. And we really emphasize that there. And there is somebody who was in the program with his wife who came to the classes and we talked about this issue of attention. He is a person who has onset of cognitive decline. Okay. And that piece of information, he reminds me of every time I see him. So he says, I have to really pay good attention, right, Peggy? I'm like, and his wife said she really sees him working on it. So really important stuff. It also helps to learn new things as you age. You know, it's great to do crossword puzzles and things, but that is pulling information that you have previously learned. So keep doing that, but also add something new. It could be a new hobby, a new activity, reading a different kind of book, whatever, but learn things. And also be a big person and use compensatory strategies when you need to. Okay. It would be like if somebody recommended that you needed a cane or a rollator and you said, oh no, I think I'll just try this on my own. And you keep falling. That wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? So it's the same way with cognitive functioning. If you're going to function better with a written schedule or making notes to yourself, I'm not a big fan of Post-its because they tend to fall down. And I know some people, you would walk into their office and they'd be like, oh my God, whatever. But calendars are good. Pillboxes, I use a pillbox, because visually, and believe me, when my husband was sick, I needed all the compensatory strategies I could possibly use because that was 24/7. And so I needed to take care of myself while I was taking care of him. Okay. That all put on your own oxygen mask first. It's totally, totally true. And become a creature of habit. For years, I said to my husband, would you just please stop asking me every morning where your wallet is and the car keys and so on and so forth. And eventually I just said, today is the last day that I am providing you this information. So you either figure something out or not. And he did. I should have threatened him earlier. All right. So that's a second component of health. So the third major component of health is, and I put these together, emotional, behavioral, and social health. Really important stuff, which I think is not emphasized nearly enough, but we're hearing more and more about it. It's really important to monitor your mood, pay attention, but it's also useful to ask other people in your life. They need to be people you trust and who really have regular contact with you. If you're concerned about your mood, ask them, what do you think? What's my mood been like recently? I just want to get some input from you. You would be amazed what people observe, but don't mention because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want you to think that they're intruding. They don't want you to feel bad about them noticing that you feel bad. Okay. But that's what friends are for, right? That's what trusted people are for. but pay attention to how you behave and also your stress level and how you're coping with it. So if you're eating or drinking, and it's interesting, there was something that popped into my email just this morning that, we all heard about that during the pandemic. Alcohol usage went way up. And what's interesting is it has not come back down. It has not come back down. And older people are one of the groups where alcohol usage went up significantly. Okay, that's not a good compensatory strategy or a coping strategy. Okay, so just a word about depression and anxiety. I wouldn't say that older people are necessarily going to become depressed or anxious, but it certainly is possible. And these are conditions that affect everything in your life. So they affect how you sleep, they affect how you eat, they affect how you relate to people. And if you think about sleep patterns for depression and anxiety, when people are anxious, they tend to have difficulty falling asleep. So it's on the front end of sleep. When people are depressed, they can usually fall asleep, then they wake up early in the morning, far earlier than they want to wake up, and they have difficulty returning to sleep. So they end up sleep deprived. And as a health psychologist, as you take a history on somebody, no matter why they were coming in, we would ask them all kinds of questions, including, so tell me about your sleep, what time to go to bed, so on and so forth. I cannot tell you, I don't know what the percentage was, but huge numbers of people were getting through the day somehow on 3 or 4 hours a night. And think of it, these were people who also had a chronic health condition. Not a good combination, not a good combination at all. I want to give you an example of how other people are affected by things like anxiety and depression and what they notice. So I had a patient years ago. This was a woman who was newly diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She was in her late 30s, and she had 3 daughters, 3 school-age daughters. And she got referred to me by one of the neurologists because there's always concern in MS frequently, because depression can actually be an initial symptom. People thought she was depressed. Well, she doesn't know if she can keep working. She's got 3 kids, a husband, and a household, and MS. So she comes, she sees me, we start talking, whatever. I think she went on a low dose of an antidepressant, and about, I don't know, maybe 5 sessions in, she comes in and she hands me this envelope with my name on it. And I said, oh, okay. I thought it was a thank you note or something. And she said, this is from my daughters. They wrote you a note. This gets me cracked up every time and she said, they told me specifically, this is just for Dr. Crawford. Do not open it, because they had sealed it. And to her credit, she did not try. But she was very concerned about what it said. And so I said, well, what do you think? I think we should open it together. And she said, okay, I'm really scared. So we opened it and we read it together. And these kids had all signed it. And they said, thank you so much for talking to our mother, because ever since she's been talking to you, she stopped calling us names. and they even had in there, like brat, whatever, they included the names. And she said, oh my God, I had no idea. I had no idea that they really knew. And she had been open with her family and told them she was now talking to somebody, and so on and so forth. But it was like amazing. It was such an eye opener to her. And these were little kids. I think the oldest was like 12 or something. And they took it upon themselves to write this note. So people, in your life can be very good observers and support you in whatever you're trying to do. So these are treatable things. And it's very important as part of this to stay connected to people. So just a word about the social isolation and loneliness. These are actually risk factors for our physical health. Studies have shown that people who are socially isolated, lonely, this is worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, my guess is there aren't probably too many smokers in this group anymore, right? If at all. So but I think loneliness and social isolation are not as concrete. Okay, we don't see those things necessarily. And, social isolation really refers to what we can see. It's the concrete part of this issue. So it is if there aren't a lot of people around that you can connect with. Now, not everybody needs the same number of people. After my husband died, I for 10 years I was an only child, and then the siblings started coming. But I can occupy myself quite well. I have lots to do. I have lots of interests. So I didn't necessarily, and then somebody said you should get a dog or a cat. I'm like, no, no, I don't really want to do that. So it's interesting too. People are always free with advice, right? Um, so so anyhow, what was I going to say? See, this is a senior moment. Okay, so all right, so and the loneliness part is the emotional part. Okay, that's the part that people feel. The social isolation is what you can see. The loneliness is what you can feel. Um, it's also harder as we get older to stay connected to people for lots and lots of reasons. Maybe we don't drive as often or feel comfortable driving at night. Maybe our hearing and our vision aren't quite what they were. So being in a group of people and trying to hear the conversations, it's not as much fun. So people start staying home. So people don't have the mobility, so they don't want to do things with certain groups of people because they don't feel like they can keep up or they can't engage in the activity. So this all becomes more difficult. Um, I'm going to mention a study that started in 1938 at Harvard. They started studying male students from Harvard and boys in the community. So, like school age boys, preteen boys, whatever. They didn't add women until the 70s. They finally got smart that, women need to be in the study. This study is still going on, and it's the study of adult development. The bottom line is that they did all kinds of biological measures and blood work and physical things and psychological assessments. And they have done this now through generations. JFK was one of the original subjects in this study. And so they've gone through multiple generations. And what they found was that the best predictor of longevity is not your genes, okay, or how much money you have. So the best predictor of longevity and happiness, it is about your relationships. Okay. So Dr. Waldinger, who is the current psychiatrist, sort of the head of the study, has a great TED talk. And I put it on the resource list. And if you just, there's also a book about this study now. But I thought, that's pretty impressive to think that that is probably going to make the biggest difference. And I would say that it is part of what I love about PeopleFit. PeopleFit is all about relationships. Yes, it's about, training and classes and, assessments and that kind of thing. But when you walk in here, I say to friends, they go, why do you go all the way to Woburn? Because I just was out walking with a neighbor yesterday and he said, Woburn, like that's really, I mean, this guy's like, 45. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what a moaner. I want a place I can walk to. I said, well, that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's just, really. Did you have a question? Right. Yeah. I think that one of the things that sort of changed that was my fall down the steps. And also, I moved here in May when COVID had just started. And I thought, okay, well, I've got my new place. I'll, rearrange the furniture 100 times. And and then I couldn't really go to the library. I'm an avid reader. I was just, so it was very difficult. And by nature, I'm an introvert. You might not think that, but I've come a long way. I've grown into my disability of being an introvert. So I've learned how to meet people and engage with people and really enjoy people. And so I thought, I really need a way to meet people. And I'm gonna sort of, how am I gonna reach out? And and then of course the libraries opened back up, and I became part of the mystery book group, and that was good, but it was virtual. And then I thought, I was reading all this stuff, and we're gonna get to this just in a second here. But I thought, well, we'll just see if we can start a group. Okay. So I'm now part of this group that we started, and we started it through the Belmont Library, called Kinship for the Kinless. Okay. And it's been going now a year and a half. So I think that being connected, so I would say that my life has expanded hugely. Obviously, COVID improving. I wouldn't say COVID's gone, clearly not, but it's better. But it's better. But also, I still spend a lot of time by myself, and I'm perfectly happy doing that. But I realized recently that now, if I'm going to go someplace, I think, who would be a good person to go with? Who would I laugh with? Who would I be able? Because I really, really missed that with my husband, being able to turn and make a comment or bounce something off of him, or go for a walk or something like that. So now I'm doing it with other people, not necessarily the people that people think I should do it with, or all these friends are like, well, you should start dating. I'm like, oh my God, it's like, I had a really good husband, and it was somebody I truly, truly liked. He wasn't perfect, nor am I, but it's interesting, again, the advice that people give us as we age. Um, so anyhow, does that answer your question? Yeah, okay. So there'll be more about that. But in the United Kingdom, since 2018, they have had a loneliness minister. This person, I think it's actually a woman currently, part of the government. And so it's because they were concerned about the rates of loneliness among their people. And so now communities can apply for funds to fund programs through organizations and centers and so on and so forth. I mean, like millions of dollars have been put into this program. So obviously, there's much more concern about this. People are writing about it, people are talking about it. Our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, has a whole book that he's written about it, about the healing power of human connection. Nicholas Kristof, shouldn't probably say this, but reflects too much of our politics, but I read the New York Times. So it comes into my email in the morning. And Nicholas Kristof is one of my favorite people who writes for the New York Times. And he's written several pieces on loneliness and the idea that we know what to do about this. Why aren't we doing it? It's not a huge, it's a huge problem. The solution, I would say, is really not so huge, but it takes effort and planning, just like this kinship group that we have. So I want to just say something about solo agers. I'm a solo ager. My husband and I did not have children, chose not to have children. We worked lots and lots and lots, and we both had other children in our lives. We had students and that sort of thing who are still in my life. So that cuts down on the people that will be part of your support system. And so there is more and more being written also about solo agers. So people who either by choice or circumstances do not have people immediately available to them, okay, to be of help. So this can happen because, like my husband and I, we didn't have children. It can happen because your spouse dies or your partner dies. It can be because you live far away. And today, people are spread all over the place, and it's not so easy necessarily to travel. It's very expensive, so on and so forth. So that's what solo agers are. But if you think about how this might be difficult. What are the things that solo agers have to deal with that might be complicated? So, for example, after my husband died, I thought, oh, right, I need somebody else to be my healthcare proxy. I need somebody else to serve as my financial power of attorney. And then you think, okay, first of all, who do I know and trust? And then, you know, that's not something easy for people to take on. So I made a decision at that point who would do those things for me. And now I'm in the process of changing that because now I know more people. I realize I want my healthcare proxy to be local, not in Richmond, Virginia, which is the current case. Although the surgeon did a great job of contacting her and explaining what I had done to myself and how he had fixed it. So those are really things that people struggle with, and sometimes as a result of struggling with it, they don't take care of it. And here they are aging, and they have no will, they have no healthcare proxy. I know this because there are people in our kinship group who are in this very situation and clearly need to not be in that situation. Having somebody to call in the middle of the night in case it's an emergency. And now I have somebody that every day, approximately 7 o'clock, I text her. So she knows I'm alive and whatever. And we have a system because a lot of people, if you live alone, you could be at the bottom of the steps doing the laundry or something, and nobody would know that. So it's important. So, again, a challenge for solo agers, certainly people who live alone as well. Sometimes I just get sick of all the responsibilities. It's like, oh my God, now I have to take care of the taxes and I have to make all the decisions about insurance and the car maintenance and whatever. So not having somebody to share those things with. So solo aging, there are certainly some good things about it, but some particularly challenging aspects. And I'm mentioning Aileen Gerhardt here. Some of you may have been to Aileen's program. She does great stuff. She founded this, it's her business, Beacon Patient Solutions, and it just helps people navigate the whole aging process, really. And she does series of 4, 6 programs, and they're free, all about how to navigate the healthcare system and all the legal stuff that you need to take care of, and how do you make sure you have a good support system and that sort of thing. So Aileen's a really good resource, and I put her on the resource list as well, so you have her links. And she does a lot of things for free. This Thursday night, she's having a navigating solo program. So if you went to the link today, you could register. It's a free program, 6:45. And it's a great way to potentially meet some other people in your geographic area that you might want to connect with. We're having a panel discussion, and I happen to be one of the people on the panel. I also put on your resource list, Aileen asked me to do a podcast, to record that with her. And I thought, oh, geez, I don't know. And do I really want to do this? And this is me trying to venture into new experiences. So I said, sure, okay, put me down. And then I was like, oh my God, what are you going to ask me? So she gave me a little bit of some clues what she was going to ask me. But it was a really interesting experience because it got me thinking about being a solo ager and how am I really dealing with this? Because I still miss my husband every day. And it's been, we're going on 8 years now. It's really, yeah. So I talk to him every day too. So I talk to other people as well. But sometimes I think he's actually answering. Some weird stuff happens sometimes. And I think, oh, there you go. So I would take a listen to that podcast if you're so inclined. So you can watch it, you can just listen to it. And I, after about 3 weeks, made myself listen to it because I thought, oh, this is too embarrassing, or I'm too self-conscious, even though I've given lots of talks and stuff. And so one of my friends emailed me and she said, Peggy, I want you to put on your big girl pants and listen to that podcast. And I did. And I was relieved because it actually was better than I anticipated. So sometimes you got to stick your toe into waters that you haven't been in before. Okay. So now we're going to talk about thriving. So here, just ask yourself, so what comes to mind when you think of thriving? Okay. Um, do you feel like you're thriving? How would you know? Do you have anybody in your life that you think is thriving? And what is it that you notice about them? How would you come to that conclusion? Again, just food for thought. Um, I'm going to give you a quote from a woman who is now a good friend, who is part of the kinship group. And we meet twice a month and we do social things and potlucks and all kinds of stuff. Anyhow, so she said, while aging is unavoidable, the goal is to counteract its effects to the fullest extent possible and for as long as possible by doing what we can to thrive. And this woman is in her mid 80s, and her husband died almost 2 years ago. So I think there are people who really believe this and are really working to make it happen. And it is work. It is work. It's effortful. You have to think about it. And it takes practice. I thought about that too, like not just comparing all of this to minestrone, but also to what we do here. What do we do? We practice. We keep practicing and we keep coming back. Okay. At one point, I thought about leaving People Fit, not because I didn't like it, because I thought, oh my God, it's like not around the corner. Now I'm sounding like my neighbor. And, but anyhow, so ultimately I decided, why would I leave? This is like walking into the tiers of fitness centers, right? Really, that's how I think about it. You walk in, people pay attention, people make eye contact, people learn your name, people help you, people are patient, kind. Come on, really. So now I've listened to many more books on CD. I'm a very old-fashioned person, so I still read regular books and stuff like that. So okay, so when we ask people in our other programs, so what words come to mind? Thriving makes them think of freedom, resilient, strength, confident, growing, independent. There's a very different tone to these words, right? Hopeful, positive, forward moving. So thriving it's healthy growth. And in strong ways. It's about making strides, moving, even if it's a teeny tiny step. Every time you do one more rep, okay, every time you take one more invitation, say yes and try something. You don't ever have to do it again, but it's trying and practicing, okay? So resilience, just so you know, resilience is something you can learn. Okay, so it's not like we're born necessarily resilient. It's like people aren't necessarily born empathic. Okay, but you can learn to be empathic. You can learn to put yourself in the shoes of other people and care about them. And it's the same way with resilience. And resilience is, if you ever have met somebody who seems to be able to bounce back from problems or things that go wrong in their life, it's like continuing to try, um, and recovering, and maybe even being better for it when they recover. That's what resilience is. And so again, you can learn that through practice, but it doesn't come magically. There's no like recording you can put under your pillow at night and that you wake up feeling more resilient. You might think of the word or something, I don't know. Um, but so I think people who are thriving and resilient, they live life with purpose and passion, and they're persistent. They stick with things even if it doesn't work out the first time, the second time. They go to the desk and they ask for help. Okay. There are lots of ways to be right. This is the perfect place to give examples, really. People Fit. But it's not that they're not realistic. They know that life comes with problems and that sort of thing. And thriving can certainly be disrupted. Okay. As I was developing this program, I kept thinking of what would be a good word for something that sort of pops into your life, that gets you off course, that makes you have to take a detour, that you have to put your thriving on pause for a bit. And disturbance, disruption, those were the words that I came up with. So it can be a change in your health. Like when I fell down and needed knee surgery, that was definitely a disruption in my life. I had to wear a leg brace, couldn't bend my leg for 6 weeks. I had to sleep with this sucker. I mean, it was really, yeah, it was really, but I did not go to rehab. Okay. One of the things that happens as we age is ageism. Okay. And God forbid you say you live alone. The first thing they said was, well, Peggy, you're going to have to go to rehab. I don't even know. I'm not going to rehab. I have good frozen food that I've made myself in my freezer. I live on one floor. I have a few neighbors that I know will help me. And what do I have to do to get out of here, basically? Yeah. There was a woman in the next room who ran around naked in the night. Yeah, it was, yeah, she had some cognitive difficulties anyhow. So, but I think ageism pops up in lots of ways, and particularly when we interact with the healthcare system, ageism comes up. Where people will treat you according to your chronological age or how you look. I realized when my hair went white, people started running over and saying, "Oh, can I help you up the stairs? Can you watch that curb? It's icy out." And I'm thinking, what happened? Do I not look able-bodied or something? So I think, but when it happens to us in healthcare and people make assumptions about us, then we don't get what we need, or we get too much stuff. We get too many prescriptions, or we get too many appointments, or too many therapies, or whatever, and we're not given an opportunity to say, "Let me tell you what I can do." I have a friend, a family friend. He's 93, lives up in Bath, Maine. Not in Bath. He lives in York, Maine. He and his wife and my parents were super duper close. And so we grew up with them. My parents were the godparents to his daughter. And so he has had some surgeries in the last couple of years. This man lives alone, does all his own cleaning, his own cooking, maintains his car, exercises, whatever. And they tried to treat him according to his age. And he set them straight. He set them straight because they wanted him to go to rehab. And he has a daughter up there, which is very helpful. But I think there's a physician who does primary care, geriatric primary care, Louise Aronson, who wrote this book called Elderhood, sorry. And she said, I've included this quote, I think, I don't know if it's on your handout, but we've made old age into a disease, a condition to be dreaded, denigrated, neglected, and denied. Okay. So it's kind of like, even when we feel great, people think of us as not great or sickly or enabled and that kind of thing. And I included on your resource list, there's a great NPR program about how common ageism is in healthcare. Not a good thing. So I'm thinking, how can we work this into something to focus on? I think each of us can do that individually by respectfully providing information and feedback to people that we interact with in the healthcare system. It doesn't often feel like we have time to do that, but it's worth trying. So, when you experience a disruption, you just really feel out of kilter. And again, I think of it as balance. So we spend a lot of time working on balance here. And in the rest of our life, there's all ways that things can get out of balance. So any one of these disruptions, if we have to move and we didn't expect to, that's a disruption, right? And I think we end up going maybe in a different direction, or we think maybe I need to rethink my goals or change the size of my goals or what they are or whatever. But it doesn't mean giving up on goals or not setting goals, just maybe different ones or different size. I think that sometimes what happens when there's a disruption in life is people hit their pause button. Everyone should have a pause button. even if you need to make it out of cardboard. I don't have television, so I don't have any remote control thing for that. But you can make it out of cardboard, or you can carve yourself one or something. But I like the idea of having a pause button. Sometimes we need to put our mouths on pause, our activity level on pause, but sometimes people put themselves on pause and they literally get stuck there and they never come off pause. So it's kind of, now it's become an off button. Okay. So remember, that's meant to be temporary, the pause button. But so bad things can come from a disruption, but good things can come from a disruption too. If you think about, had I not fallen and thought about how am I going to meet people? How am I going to do more of that? And starting the kinship program, where would I be? I would not be probably here today um, and having a session with Allie in an hour. Okay. So it can be that kick in the butt, the wake up call that we need. So use it. It's free. So a little bit about making changes. I know we're running out of time, but give some thought to, so what motivates you to make a change? Maybe you've been thinking about making a change, but it feels too big, or you're not sure where to start, or something like that. What challenges and obstacles do you anticipate, or that you've experienced when you've tried to make a change before? And that's not negative thinking. That's just being prepared, right? Okay. And it's very helpful to think about potential benefits to making a change long before you start making a change. It's sort of the foundation of making a change. Think about, well, why would I want to do this? How might it help me? How might my life be better? What would I bring into my life that I'm missing or I would like more of? And when you think about the benefits, that actually functions as motivation. Okay, it's what usually gets us started. It's why most of us come here, because in some way we're benefiting. Okay, and even if we're not really doing a ton more physically than what we did 6 months ago, we benefit by being together and seeing those faces and hearing those voices and laughing and so on and so forth. It's also why I don't wear my distance glasses here. I don't watch the television because it's like, I never realized that soap operas are still on. They don't seem to do anything other than drink and sit in restaurants. It's really, and I can see that without my glasses. So anyhow, so think about those benefits. People feel better about themselves when they make changes and they're successful. Okay, so steps to making successful change. Okay, there are lots of things people can do. And you can look at this. This handout is meant for you to refer back to, but starting small, okay? Like usually, and again, using exercise here, you don't come in and do back-to-back classes. You don't spend an hour warming up, right? You don't do 100 of something, okay? You start small, you warm up, and then you work your way up. And it's that way, whether you're meeting people and engaging in activities, or you're reading books, or whatever it is. You can be realistic. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. So I just gave you some information there about SMART goals. So again, and being really specific. So like if somebody said, oh, I'm going to exercise more. Is that a SMART goal? No. It's not a SMART goal because it's not specific. There's no time frame to it, that sort of thing. Oh, I forgot that we were going to stop for questions. I'm sorry. So there's another senior moment. So I will make sure that we have time. That's why I'm trying to get through this. So just any change you want to make, break it up. Okay. I find that breaking things up, I used to, for years and years, my husband, I would make him muffins every week. And he had like the same kind of muffins. I was like, don't you want to change? No. I want these banana, walnut. So I would make the dry part on Saturday and add the wet part on Sunday. And somehow that made the whole task feel so much smaller. I know it's silly, right? But it was like, oh, because people are like, how do you find the time? And he would say, do you really have the time to? I was like, so I would make it work. So you can be smart about setting goals. You want to have a way to monitor your progress. Why do you think we have these clipboards here that we keep track of things on? It's a way to monitor progress, okay? And you can do it however you like. I use technology, but not nearly as much as some of you. So I still do a lot of things written down, whatever, keep track of things. But it's very helpful to look back then and see where have you come from and what have you made progress in and what do you want to make progress in, something else. It's also really, really helpful to tell someone in your life what you're working on, what you're trying to achieve, and let them know how can they help you. They can check on it once a week. They can just encourage you. Maybe they want to do it with you. This is why so many people join things together, why people walk together, whatever it is, because you can also have a conversation and so on and so forth. But it's really helpful to be open about that and let them be part of the process. And as you're trying to set a goal and achieve it, be good to yourself. Many, many people are much better to other people than they are to themselves. They're not patient, they're not kind. And did you know that kindness is associated, we now know from research, with a better aging outcome? Okay. So, it doesn't cost a lot to be kind. So it also, you need to be kind to yourself. So start at home. Um, and then there are all kinds of potential challenges and obstacles. Like I said, your goals could just be too big. So you can always readjust that. Believe it or not, people are resistant to change. Can you imagine that? But it's true. People are like, well, I've always done it this way and I don't know. But a lot of that is anxiety and fear. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And so again, sticking your toe into that unknown waters kind of thing. Um, People just often I hear, oh, I don't have time, I don't have energy. Oh, I need to do this for my grandchildren. And then so people often put themselves at the bottom of the priority list. At least some of the time, you need to be at the top of that list. There really is enough time in the day. Okay, you can take turns with people in your life. People are also reluctant to leave their comfort zone. Well, they're going to be strangers there, people I don't know. Um, it's just going to be too hard for me. I don't want to fail, kind of thing. But again, remember we said practice, 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 practice. So give it a try. All right. Another one of those disturbances might pop up in your life. Maybe somebody that you really care about gets sick and they need more of your time and attention. Maybe you, like me, have an injury or something, or like me, get COVID. I'm starting to have way too many examples from my own life. And I realize that, oh, I guess this is true. I really am aging and I really am vulnerable, much more than obviously what I was hoping I would be. Um, Sometimes too, people get advice from people who aren't particularly supportive. People discourage people, which it's like I used to see a lot of people who were, in addition to other things they were doing, they were also trying to lose weight. And then their partner or their spouse would bring home a big, oh, I know this is your favorite candy bar. And they'll big, there's something really off there. Um, so as you finish hearing this talk, just to think about what little change might you want to make. It could be like a person you've been meaning to contact, that thank you note you've been meaning to write. It could be a one-time thing. It doesn't have to be a membership somewhere that you go multiple times a week. It could be anything. I have been known, I'm going to confess, I'm a to-do list writer. There have been times where I've already done the thing and then I write it on the list so I can cross it off. It's very powerful. So, people sometimes think, oh, maybe weird people like psychologists, and then psychologists married to psychologists, that must, you like are different from regular people. And most of us really are not different from regular people. We're just regular people. So, anything that empowers you to keep practicing and keep trying. So, I gave you some resources. I have a much longer list from the longer program, but hopefully I picked out some that are pertinent and that might be of interest to you. So pick and choose or use this to line your kitchen cabinets. I don't, whatever you decide to do with it. But clearly there is a lot of interest in this topic. Okay. And maybe we could do a follow-up next year. That would be fun. That would be fun. So let me just give you one example and then we'll be done. But when I said that we did a 6-week follow-up at the Council on Aging, see, I did remember that I said this, in Cambridge, we came back after 6 weeks and they had the 3-week program. And so I said, so has anybody actually worked on a change or done anything differently? Or what did you do with all of this information? And this one woman, it just turned out she was a psychologist. Okay, so this woman had a PhD, so highly educated person. But there's such a thing as common sense, right? So it doesn't necessarily, is not highly correlated with official education. So she said, oh, I've been working on something. So the group was like, what? Well, what have you been working on? And she said, I have been working on getting out of a chair. Okay. Does this person need people fit or what? And the group was like, what? And she said, yeah, I'm working on how to safely get out of a chair. And she said, they told me 15 years ago that I needed a knee replacement. Oh my God. The group was appalled. And they said, and she was using some kind of odd cart thing that was not an official assistive device and not really quite a grocery cart. But this, and she lived in Cambridge. This is how she was making her way around Cambridge. And the group said, really? This is what you're working on? They're like, oh, that's good that you're working on something. And so what do you think? The group said, so when's the last time you saw a physical therapist? This came from the group. I loved it. And she said, I've never seen a physical therapist ever, ever. So I guess when I say to you, no change is too small, I would love to follow up with this woman and see if she ever saw a physical therapist, because the group was like, let us help you. Let us give you some names. It was really. So, so sometimes thriving can look pretty tiny, but the impact of this woman wanting to thrive, I think, was profound on the group. And they were like, whoa, okay, let me rethink the goal that I've set, kind of thing. So it was very interesting. And I totally respected that she was open with the group to talk about it and accepted their feedback, which was certainly well meant. So thank you.